Megan. Hi.
Hi. I feel like I have to be quiet because you guys have these like soothing voice. No. Like warn your listeners. I'm so loud.
I'm gonna try to project in this episode. I know I like whisper sometimes, so.
You guys have spa voices.
Spa voices.
It's so funny because everyone says that to us, and
like very soothing to listen to.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm so loud when I hear myself speak, and then it isn't until I go into like editing these episodes where I'm like, oh, Emma, you need to speak way louder.
So
but I still never change my audio levels.
That's so funny.
Well, we have an actress with us here who is going to project.
Oh yes, use my stage voice. Whatever that is.
Well, Meg. Well, Megan, we've been talking about this, not specific kind of like episode, but, you know, our health journeys for a really long time.
Yeah.
You and I, and we've been bonding over just kind of the bumps that come with figuring out your body, feeling heard in the medical space, feeling heard by your community, oftentimes feeling gaslit, how important it is to share our stories, and kind of creating something that can be shared and put out there so people feel less alone. And so I'm really grateful that you're on.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Because I think this is the beginning to something really great. And, you know, I don't want to speak for either of you, but I know that both of you have been going through and battling endometriosis, among other health conditions. And while I can't relate, yay! While I can't relate to that specific one, what I do know is I've had a fair share of my own, so I sympathize. I'm there with you, and I think this is a really important episode for you both to share your stories. And I know Emma dove into it a little bit in her pregnancy story, but I think this will be kind of a deeper dive in. So I guess to get us started, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us, you know, when you got diagnosed officially?
I remember calling you, getting ready to go into my laparoscopy, being like, what am I doing? What is this? So yeah, just to echo what you were saying, I think having support and community and women to talk to is just so important. I was diagnosed officially October of this past year.
Wow.
A journey that started in
A very long time ago.
2014. So yeah.
Wow.
So very long ago, which
Almost 10 years to get diagnosed.
I think is important for people to really understand that it doesn't happen overnight. You don't get all your answers overnight. That's not to spook people, but I think it's to
set expectations.
Set expectations, but also empower you to just like keep looking for answers. Yeah. Emma, I know you've had a roller coaster with your health, and so why don't you tell us kind of specifically the date? I know we mentioned it. Was it 2021?
Yeah, I got diagnosed in 2021 that I had endo. And I'm just from listening to what you just said, and for everyone listening, we got diagnosed post laparoscopy surgery.
Yeah.
So you could be told multiple times by several doctors that it's a possibility that you have endometriosis, but there's no way of confirming that you have it unless you have surgery. So both of us have had. And how many have you had?
2 at this point.
2.
Well, one, like I said, that should have been a diagnosis and it was missed, and then a second one to actually go in and remove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there talks of potentially having another one?
You know, my surgeon was really optimistic. I ended up having stage 3, and I was in surgery for 4 hours. And when I came out, she was very optimistic that they had removed everything.
Wow.
So she said, I want you to live life like it's not coming back, and if it does, we'll take care of it. So that's where I'm at right now. Do I know that's going to happen? No, but you know what? Like, that's the mindset I'm going to try and stay with, and then obviously live my life in a way to do everything that is in my power to prevent getting back to where I was pre-surgery. You know?
I definitely want to dive into like preventative stuff. I feel like that's still an open topic that's being researched. Like no one
Totally.
truly knows how you prevent this or how you minimize symptoms. But before we do, let's dive into a definition just so people kind of understand. So what is endo?
You gotta
Yeah.
take it. I get it.
Okay, well,
We
I
have a
did,
book.
Yeah, I brought this book.
We're not
because-
doctors, disclaimer.
Yes,
And
disclaimer.
so talk to your doctors about this. And this is just kind of personal
Yes, this is-
testimonials and stories. Okay.
This is all speaking from experience, and I brought this Beating Endo book written by 2 doctors. And so I will read the definition from
Yes,
here.
perfect.
Just from my understanding, and come in if you
Sure.
want. It's excess scar tissue growing on and around your ovaries and other organs. So
Yeah.
that's where the possible spread within your body can happen.
Yeah. And then part of the understanding is that it is not uterine tissue per se, like tissue from your actual endometrium going outside of your body, but it's a tissue that mimics that tissue. And so just like when we have a period every month and it sheds and bleeds and inflames,
Right.
this tissue mimics that and does the exact same thing.
Yes.
Which is so fun.
Literally what it says here.
Sounds like a hoot, honestly.
Exactly what it says in here. So the endometrium,
A plus.
A+ in endo.
the endometrium is the lining of the uterus. In an estimated 176 million women worldwide, cells similar to those in the lining of the uterus are found outside the uterus. In these women, the presence of those cells where they don't belong distorts the body's anatomy, ignites inflammatory response, and increases likelihood of autoimmune dysfunction and disease.
Sounds about right.
So that's your definition. Definitely not a simple thing to deal with. And so what's the holdup? Like why is it so hard to diagnose?
I think anytime there's an issue, in order to treat it, you have to understand the root cause of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest issue with endometriosis right now is there has not been enough research to truly pinpoint why it's even happening, where it's coming from. There's so many theories, but there has not been enough practical research to say for certain this is what we need to go after. So right now, the focus of research has kind of shifted from, oh, this is a period disorder or this is a menstrual disorder to this is autoimmune, this is, an inflammatory condition, or even looking at the possibility that it is a genetic condition that when you are in utero, if you have endometrial tissue in your body, once you go through puberty, it's like waking the sleeping dragon. Like all of a sudden, all of the issues start to show. And that's why we've associated it with periods.
Right.
The landscape of what it is and how to treat it is just evolving so fast right now that I think you have to stay on top of it. Otherwise, you'll miss the new definition or the new thing. So, yeah.
And I think that's like a good reminder for everyone watching and listening is that like don't take the first answer you get as like this is a legitimate answer, not to like obviously like every opinion is valid and gets you to the next opinion, so don't dismiss what people are saying, but I think multiple opinions and recommendations is probably better off, right? Like the both of you have probably seen so many specialists and doctors that have said many different things, right?
Yeah.
So many. I want to jump a little bit further back and understand what symptoms you were feeling for so long to make you get all these opinions.
I would say the first thing was just painful periods. However, my mom and my sister both had really heavy periods, both had bad cramps. And so I think I grew up just thinking when you get your period, you have cramps. That's how it works. Everyone at school talked about, oh, I'm cramping, blah, 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 But it was to the point sometimes that it would like take my breath away. Like I'd be walking and okay, I don't know if you had this when you were pregnant, but do you know what lightning crotch is?
Yeah.
Okay, so I had lightning crotch on the reg, like all the time, just all the time. I'd be walking and be like, okay, 1 second. Let me just
like a shooting pain almost?
It feels, the best description I've heard is that Zeus himself smited your coochie.
Ooh.
And I was like, I love that.
You don't want Zeus there.
No smiting of the coochie, please.
No, it literally, it feels the way it sounds.
Yep.
It's like a lightning bolt just like
Up your crotch.
shoots up.
I feel like I felt that before.
It's possible. No, and it's not uncommon. I mean,
Yeah.
like when you're pregnant, it happens a lot because
Yeah.
I won't nerd out, but the muscle that controls it spasms a lot
Got
when you're
it.
pregnant.
Okay.
So anyway.
So you felt that on
That
the
was
reg.
all the time. And it was like,
Whoa.
I remember being 13 years old. I was at summer camp and I was on my
13.
period and I was laying in my bunk bed and I was holding my breath because I had such sharp pain that I was like, maybe if I just don't move, this will go away. And then throughout high school, again, just like painful periods, they progressively started getting heavier the older I got. And then by the time I was in my early 20s, I was having other hormonal issues. So I was having extreme mood swings. I was breaking out. I'd never had acne before and my face was like a disaster. I was just having like crying spells, like just weird stuff going on. And I knew something was off. And at that point, I was having pain during my period to where I was like sweating and starting to see stars, and like I couldn't do any like physical exercise the first couple of days of my period, that sort of thing. Beyond that, it was a lot of just hormone issues, and I got to a place where I was so off emotionally, mentally, that one of my doctors who I'd known for a long time took my mom out of the room, sat me down, and he said, "Are you on drugs?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Are you doing anything that you shouldn't be doing?" And I was like, "I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I will do anything you tell me to. I just need to feel mentally stable again." And so they put me on birth control because that's their answer for everything.
It's true.
How old are you?
20.
So you started birth control when you were 20 years old.
Yes.
Okay.
But I was not sexually active.
Okay.
And so it was strictly hormones. And they did that to regulate me. Basically, once I got my hormones tested, my levels were showing that my body was perimenopausal at 20 years old because I was so stressed. My cortisol was so off the chart. It was like, we just have to get you stable. So that was kind of the purpose of the birth control. But then my periods got really wacky, and I was like, I don't like how I feel. So I got off of that. And that really kicked off this journey of almost just accepting, okay, periods suck. This is my life. But over the next couple of years, it progressively got worse. And I started seeing a gynecologist was to, try and figure out, okay, is this something going on, or am I just having painful periods? And she was basically like, "Oh, are your periods regular? Like, do they come regularly?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Okay, you're fine." And I was like, "But they hurt really bad, and I can't get out of bed." And after that, I kind of just again laid it to rest for another year or so. I was seeing a naturopathic doctor at that point, just trying to get my hormones regulated. They put me on progesterone because I was estrogen dominant, so trying to balance all of that. And the other thing that started happening was I was having really severe pain in my hip. And I started noticing that it would get worse around my period or ovulation. So I went to PT, and after a while, my PT was like, I feel like there's something else going on here, because it's like sometimes you're totally fine and sometimes you're not. Like, it's kind of odd. And I was like, okay.
Improving. Like, you're not.
I plateaued. Like, I
right.
improved to a certain degree, and then it was like some weeks I came in totally fine. Some weeks I was like, I'm in so much pain, I can't move. And she was like, it feels like it's nerve pain. Maybe it's sciatica. Maybe it's something like that. Like, I think you need to look at something else. So I had seen another gynecologist, and I'm actually telling this a little out of order. I had seen another gynecologist, and this was the first time anyone had mentioned endometriosis. And so I asked her, I said, "Do you think it's possible that I have endometriosis?" Same thing. She was like, "No, If you would have heavier periods, you would have your regular periods, you know. How many tampons are you going through on a period? And I was like, do people count? Like, I don't know. Like,
I've gotten that question asked too, and I'm
Really?
like, okay, first
That's
of
such
all,
a bizarre question.
it's so weird.
I'm like, first of all, there's regular tampons, there's super tampons. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yes.
Like, people wake up at different times of the day. Like, there's so many factors that go into it. That's such a terrible question.
Terrible question.
Yeah.
So then she says, why don't we put you on birth control? And I said, no, I've done that. I don't want to do that again. Also, again, still not currently sexually active. Don't really want to mess up my brain. Like, can we do something else? So she basically just shut me down, was not helpful at all, wouldn't even consider endometriosis. So finally, after this PT was like, I think something else is going on, I went to another gynecologist. This is now the 4th gynecologist at this point. And I walked in the office, and I had been told, I was like, if you go to a dude gynecologist, sometimes they're more sympathetic because they don't know. So they're like, cool, I'll listen. So I was like, I'm going to a man this time. Let's see if he'll listen to me. And I walked in, and I sat down, and I was like, I just need you to know, I've left 4 gynecologists. If you are not going to listen to what I'm saying, I'm getting up and I'm leaving right now. I'm not wasting my time here. And he was like, okay, what's going on? And I was like, thank you. And so I told him everything, and he was like, it does sound like, so I told him about the pain I was having. Oh, I missed the part. In between here, I got married and became sexually active. Sex was hurting. So anyway, missed that whole part. Very important. Anyway, sex was really painful. So that's where we're at now. So finally, I was to the point where I think I'd been married, I don't know, I was probably like 8 or 9 months into marriage, and I was crying every time I'd have sex, which is so romantic. It really turns your partner on when you sob.
I feel this
pain.
so hard right now.
So, yeah, I told him, I was like, I'm having a lot of pain during sex. I'm still having really painful, heavy periods. I was having a lot of a lot of clotting during my periods, heavy clots. And I was like, this just doesn't feel normal. And he was like, okay, let's do a transvaginal ultrasound. So went in, had that done. He was like, we do see a cyst on your ovary. It looks like an endometrioma. So your options are, we can put you on Lupron, or if you really want to do the surgery, we can do the surgery. And Lupron is a hormone suppressant. It basically sends you into a temporary menopause and shuts off your hormones. And I am already so sensitive to everything that I was like, if you turn off my hormones, I'm going to not be okay. So I said, I want to do surgery. He said, okay. So I had my first surgery. And going into it, it was like, okay, we're finding answers. This is happening. I'm going to get a diagnosis. They had warned me, your fertility could be affected. We'll see when we get in there. We're going to do our best. And I had my first surgery, and I came out. And he said, so we found a cyst, and we found some scar tissue on the back of your uterus, but we didn't find any endometriosis.
What?
What scar tissue
Yeah.
is?
Yeah. And I bawled my eyes out. It's the strangest thing to get what is technically a good report, but feel so empty.
Because the mystery hasn't been solved, and you feel like
You're back on the hamster
you're
wheel.
back on the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
But you're just
Exactly.
like, what was that for?
Why did I
Right.
spend that money? Why did I go under anesthesia? Why have I wasted all this time?
Yeah.
So I was in a really bad place after that surgery because I had sort of, I don't know, I was like, I guess this is my life. I'm never going to get to enjoy sex. I'm always going to have painful periods. My hip is geriatric. That's just where we're at right now. And one of my friends suggested I try pelvic floor PT.
I've done that.
So I ended up there for several months, and they said that they thought I had another condition going on. So they referred me to a female sexual dysfunction specialist, where I was diagnosed with a secondary condition. Well, technically 2. A hypertonic pelvic floor, which is overactive, super tight pelvic floor muscles. Wow. And then a condition called provoked vestibular vulvodynia, which is basically a hormone imbalance in the tissue of your coochie. The scientific term. So that became a separate thing to treat, because at this point, I had gotten to the point where like I just didn't want to have sex anymore. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm done. It's like, I love you, but I'm done. I can't do this.
I feel like, and that's what's not talked about so
Enough.
often with endometriosis, is that it really, and I'm going to swear here, it really fucking hurts to have sex.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to piggyback what you said. Like, I cry very often because it hurts so much. And it's not because we don't love our partner or it's just crazy that we want to have sex up here, and then down there we're just like, please
It's like a
get
disconnect.
away from
touch
me.
me.
Don't touch me. Don't look at me. I don't want, like, it just hurts. Like, it sucks that when we hear the word sex, we immediately put it with the word pain.
Yeah. I mean, I always say like, if you touched a stove and burnt your hand, would you ever touch the stove again? Of course not. So if sex hurts, in what world do I think of sex and go, I want to do that?
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, and again, like you said, it has nothing to do with the fact of loving your partner or anything like that. But I do think what's crazy is that endometriosis does affect just beyond yourself, because my husband hates watching me cry when we have sex. That's horrible, right? Like,
Yeah.
nobody wants to see their partner in pain and crying. Like, that's awful. And so, even for him and for myself, there's such a mental toll.
Right.
And then you're talking with your girlfriends and they're like, oh, I hooked up with this guy, or, oh, we had sex, it was so good. And you're like, what is that like?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And it
Never
can be,
knew a day.
right. It's just isolating. It could be really, really isolating. So if anyone out there feels that way, you're not alone, because there's other people dealing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please talk to your doctor, because
Please.
sex should not hurt.
No.
Sex should not hurt.
I applaud you both for even bringing that part up, because it's something that like you said, so many people are hesitant to share, and also kind of like you feel like ashamed, like, why am I not functioning in this way? And I want to like express my love, and I want to, show that side, right? And it's just not working for you. Like,
Yeah.
it hurts.
Well, and I feel like for women already, so much of sex is mental.
Right.
Like, not that there aren't women who love sex and have a high libido, like, that's out there. But I would say a lot of women need to feel mentally present. They need to feel safe. They need to
Relaxed.
feel relaxed. They need to feel like there. And when you're so focused on every other thing with your body, it takes you out of it.
Right.
It
And-
takes the pleasure out of it.
It does.
It starts to feel like a chore versus something you want to do.
Yeah. It's interesting the way it affects the relationships in your life, too.
Of course.
It's not just you.
You had many similar symptoms to what Megan was saying. Did it take you that long to get a diagnosis?
Yeah. So I was struggling for 8 years, not 10.
Close enough.
Close enough.
Close
yeah.
enough. Still very long, like 2 college terms.
Yeah. I think I remember reading somewhere that it takes probably average 14 years for a woman to get.
14 years.
Yeah. I could be wrong.
Unacceptable.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I think I read that somewhere. And my best friend actually told me that I had endometriosis before I had even known what it was. She's like, you have endo, you need to go to the doctor and get checked. And I'm like, I don't
Know what that is.
know what that is. And then when David, my husband, was in PA school and he started to learn about endo, he pushed me to the doctor and was like, I think you have endo.
Wow.
So now it was like, okay, 2 people in my life told me I have endo. Like,
Right.
And thanks to David, I was able to vocalize for myself that I need to get off of all my medication and put myself into surgery, because that's what I needed. But similar to you, like, my symptoms were very, very painful periods. I used to faint almost every single month due to my period. I had very painful sex. Every position, lubricant it's not a dry or wet issue. It's an inside issue.
Is it like, not to get too TMI, but like, where do you feel it in your pelvic area? Like, is it just like pressure in your pelvic area?
Yeah. I mean, any person you ask, they might describe it differently.
A little differently.
Yeah. For me, it feels there's like a knife sitting in my stomach, and with every thrust, it would just hit my pelvic region.
Mine was almost like, I described it like I felt like someone was holding my uterus and just pulling down.
Yeah,
like every same thing. Like every thrust, it was like just like yanking. It felt like it was like a burning and pulling sensation.
Yeah.
Oh.
Same. And then extreme moodiness. So like I would often diagnose myself as depressed because, you know, your mood is already so affected with like every little thing aggravates you. So you get just really passive or aggressive or quick in your reactions to people, which make you come across as like really sad or angry. So I would tell myself that I was depressed. And then a lot of hair growth in other areas. So that has a lot to do with the PCOS. And acne flare-ups where it was like my hormones were just completely mistreated and misaligned. Yeah. And I don't know, everything was just like one thing on top of the next. But I would say the biggest thing was painful sex.
And you got diagnosed on your first surgery that you got.
Yeah.
Because they removed.
Yeah, so similar to you, my surgery was 4 hours, and it was scheduled for 30 minutes just to go in and see if I had possible endo. So when I woke up 4 hours later, that's when they found all of it. And they weren't able to laser off everything. They think that they got most of it. But now I'm in talks of potentially having a second surgery because my flare-ups are coming back. My uterus is tilted and had fallen. And it's just a matter of like, endometriosis just feels like one of those, another autoimmune disease that just will not go away. And there's so many misconceptions on treatments, and we can probably dive into that as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But like there's so many false accusations where it's like, okay, you can get a hysterectomy and everything's gone, and that's false. They're like, you can be put on birth control and everything's gonna be leveled. And
get pregnant was my favorite advice. I was like, oh yes, for 9 months of relief, I'll bring a child into the world. That's a great plan.
Yeah.
Was that in your textbook? Did they teach you that in medical school?
Pregnancy is not
I
the
could
cure.
not believe my mind. How many girls have been told that? Just get pregnant.
Well,
it's like,
because I was pregnant, I can say like it helped tremendously, but
Sure.
it paused it.
But like, should I bring a child into the world to feel better for 9 months?
Well, she's definitely cured me, but it doesn't cure endometriosis.
Right.
David gave me the best. What's the word where, like a comparison? Metaphor. I don't. I can't blanking on the word, but he basically was like, imagine the game of soccer, or in the game of soccer, the ball is endometriosis, right? So the ball is being kicked around, okay? It's going to different players, so it's hitting different organs and affecting different regions. When you bring in pregnancy, it's basically one player takes the ball, puts their foot on the ball for 9 months. The ball does not move. It's just static, and it stays there. So it's not growing. It's not rupturing. Right. It's not hitting anybody else.
Yeah.
And the second that ball gets kicked out of the way, which means the baby comes out, it's back in the game. But we don't know how fast or how slow it's growing. So for those 9 months, I had felt the healthiest I'd ever felt in my entire life. I was on cloud 9 during pregnancy, and that's why I want to get pregnant again, because I miss that feeling of just feeling healthy and not in pain and having enjoyable sex. Like, I really miss that. So get pregnant, yes, for
That's
the
what you gotta do.
of the growth, but not for the belief that it gets rid of endometriosis.
How long after you gave birth did the symptoms
Immediately.
kind of immediately?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, head was being shown was when I got the first influx of pain back. Not like she wasn't even fully out of, and that's a split second, right? Like, at least for me, it was a split second of seeing the head and then her coming out. Seeing the head was like a boom, my pain's starting to come back. She came out and I got rushed into a CT scan because it was like, okay, let's see if the pain is something else. And I'm like, this feels like my endo pain.
I have a question because I feel like this is different for everyone. One, I was kind of fortunate with my endo. I did have a point where my periods were really heavy where I would get like hot and kind of see stars and stuff like that. But I don't know many times that I had to like truly stay home from school or stay home from work. I would just, not be comfortable. I'd just be in pain or trying to fight through it. But there's a lot of women who can't. I mean, they truly can't get out of bed. They're throwing up. They're passing out. Like, I was fortunate not to be to that degree. But two things. One, the weird thing about endometriosis is the severity does not always equate with your symptoms. So you could have stage 1 and have far worse symptoms than someone with stage 4. Right. Or you can have stage 4 and have horrible symptoms.
Right.
So I guess my question is, for you, do you feel like you had symptoms all throughout the month, or was it certain periods of time for you?
I love this question because I would have more pain around my period before it even came and after than during my period.
I was the same way.
And that is one of the main like misconceptions about endometriosis. They're like, oh, I have painful periods, I have endo. It's like, you might have it, but most cases of endometriosis, you feel it around. Like when you're ovulating,
awful.
Is awful.
Really?
And
awful.
then post period, it's like, oh, here comes a flare up.
Yeah.
And then like during the period when you're actually shedding an egg, it's like like maybe some relief. Like there's stuff going on down there and it's not just growth. Like, I
found that with so many women. Like, that's why I wanted to ask. Cause I think that's, like you said, just the biggest misconception that we say painful periods because it's kind of a blanket way to say it. But I agree. I feel like my day 2 or 3 or 4 of my period was actually like, cool.
Yeah. Like I can
live
like this.
Into it, awful. Coming off of it, awful. Yeah.
What's that about? Why do you think? Scientific, not that we know scientifically too much.
My guess would be just the hormone fluctuations that are happening during those times. One builds up to your period and then drops, and then the next one builds up to ovulation. So maybe that. I don't. Yeah.
Wow.
Ask your doctor.
I mean, ask your doctor. I can look in the book.
book.
But I feel like it might take me a little bit to find it.
Just you both explaining how long it's taken shows that many people, probably didn't believe you. They minimized what you were going through. They kind of think for you in some capacity. And so obviously doctors are amazing. I've seen that happen in my personal journey with doctors, but did you ever feel like your family didn't believe you or your friends thought you were dramatic? These are obviously like the depressed thing, like you thinking you were clinically depressed, but it's had so much more to do with your body. Like, how often did you feel a little bit gaslit by the people around you?
I definitely felt it more from doctors than I did from my family. Like, my family has always been very supportive. I think what did it for them was I've always been very happy-go-lucky, very glass half full, and I think for the first time in my life, they could see how not okay I was, how messed up I was mentally, and I was bitchy, and I had never been bitchy before. And I remember one Christmas, I like snapped at my mom, and I went upstairs and started sobbing, and she came up, and I was like, I don't know why I said that to you. Like, I felt so horrible and so guilty, and I just felt so out of control. And I think they saw that. Even Gavin, my husband now, like, he was my boyfriend at the time, and I pushed him away so hard, and he was like, what are you doing? I think everyone saw how much I was being affected, and I think it was hard to deny that I wasn't myself.
Right.
From a standpoint of being dramatic, I don't think they thought anything, but I'm sure they got sick of me, because I, every day, look at this article, read this girl's story, read this Reddit thread. Will you listen to this podcast? Just constantly, because I needed someone to validate the pieces of the puzzle that I was trying to put together.
Right.
So they didn't express it, but I'm sure they got sick of me.
Think you bring up a really important point about like validation. Like, when you are seeking answers, you often try to find validation in other people to validate what you're feeling.
Yes.
And you kind of like don't find that your validity or like what you think is valid. Like, why do we need other people to validate how we're feeling? Like, why do I need, obviously having that support system so comforting, but I think like I finally reached a point in my journey where I was like, I don't really need validity anymore.
That's
like,
good.
You know what I mean? But
It's really good.
But I think that's
What is it like?
because it's just like it's a disappointing cycle, because people might not understand. I mean, they don't understand. They don't have what you're experiencing. So it's amazing that your family has been supportive.
I think another thing to add to maybe why you don't look for validation all too much now is because there's a lot more to say and researched on, let's say, like celiac disease, but because I think there's almost nothing.
Half the people don't even know what endometriosis is. You say it and they're like, what the heck is that?
Yeah, like most of the time at least for me, I feel like I'm being dramatic over something. So to go onto Reddit and be like, I'm 6 days into my period and I'm feeling like this, like, is anyone else feeling like this? And then there's like a long ass thread of people like, oh, honey.
What I will say about autoimmunes, and especially with celiac disease, it is one of the most under-researched autoimmune, because there's no medication that fixes it. So anything that's not funded by pharma, they're not going to invest research in. So there is not a lot, but I think like the validity part, like obviously you want validity from those you love, but I think that oftentimes makes the emotional roller coaster like so much crazier, because you're looking for, you know, that comfort in other people, where you should find that also in yourself and be empowered. And I feel the way I feel. I'm not going to let the world gaslight me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep fighting. And I think like that's such an important message for like our listeners and for the community. Like, don't just brush it off. Don't feel like you're a burden on the people you love. Like, seek those answers and like, don't give up. But what about you in regards to like feeling like unheard? Or
I was very unheard.
Yeah, in your family or friends or.
I love my family to death, and now they're extremely supportive.
But there's some sort of like answer, sort of.
Yeah, but it wasn't until after my surgery that everyone was like, "Oh shit, Emma actually has something wrong with her." It was for years like, "Oh, maybe you're just
stressed."
Maybe you're just stressed, or maybe you're sensitive to this food. I can't tell you the amount of diets I've been on.
Like elimination and
the FODMAP elimination diet, no gluten, no dairy, no meat. Like I was on any diet you could possibly think on, like just to figure out if it's a food sensitivity.
Yeah.
Right.
And it wasn't, again, until I went into surgery that my family, you know, finally was like, okay, to the point where no one in my family was scheduled to be in town
Right.
when I had my
Yeah,
surgery.
I remember you telling me that. That hit me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now when I speak up about my pain in front of my family, especially, they're like, oh, what do you need? Do you need to sit, do you need to sit down? Like, is it really bad? Like, what can I get you? Like, they're very receptive now.
Yeah.
But I think also because, like, no one knew anything about endo in my family. Like, it wasn't until I really, started dating David where he was like, guys, like, this is a really bad disease. Like, you guys should know about it. And then when I finally got treated.
I mean, it's like a silent disease. Like, no one can see it on you guys.
Yeah.
You both are glowing, like you're pulling it off well, like physically, but like no one knows the pain inside. And I think that's like what will it take? Like, if someone has like an open cut wound, like you rush them to medical attention, but like we don't really see what's happening inside.
And that was my biggest thing, like especially with my friends. I was like, they can't physically see what's going on, so me complaining, like I don't want to be the complainer in the friend group. So it's like I never complained about my pain around my friends. And it was very, very rare where I would make an excuse to say like I can't be somewhere. Like I would suck up the pain and be there, even if that meant me like sitting in the corner and crouching over because I was in pain. Or like I find that happiness and sadness or frustration is very contagious. So if I'm stressed, frustrated, I feel like the people around me will be the same. So I tend to just shut down and not show those emotions, especially in times of endo pain.
Yeah.
Well, you can show those here.
I think, yes, free space. I think it's one of those things, like you said, where anytime you have a chronic illness, anytime you're dealing with something that's, an invisible illness or whatever, you never want it to become what you're known for or your personality.
Exactly.
I don't want my personal brand to be, I have endometriosis. But when it gets to the point that it's affecting your day-to-day interactions, it does take a toll on whether it's relationships or your ability to participate in things, or even just your behavior. It's kind of that thing of being gracious with people because we never know what they're going through. I remember sitting in a makeup chair one time in the middle of just awful pain, just trying to breathe, and I'm like sweating because I'm in pain. And no one there knew I was dealing with that. And that's not to be like, oh, poor me, but it gives you empathy for maybe if someone isn't the friendliest one day, maybe if somebody is in a mood or whatever, just to go, you know what? I don't know. They could be having an endo flare up. You just don't know.
Or
and so
it's a personal problem. It's not anything about you.
Yeah. But it is. You learn to. I think one of the craziest things I was told, or an aha epiphany moment for me, was that when you have chronic pain, you forget you're not supposed to be in pain.
Yeah.
So you learn to live with this low degree of discomfort and pain, and you forget, I shouldn't actually be living with this. This is not normal. And a doctor once told me that periods shouldn't be painful. And I think with endo, that's a big thing. When you do tell someone what you're going through, oh, I have painful periods, or oh, my mom had painful periods, or my friend does, or whatever. And it's a different kind of experience when it's your whole body responding to this issue. And to write it off as, oh yeah, I understand period pain, is one, we shouldn't have period pain. If you're having healthy periods, they should not be painful. And it's not simply that. It's so much bigger than that.
I want to read this part of this book because this is what made me get the book, and it's what you're saying
What's
right now.
What's the title of the book and who's it by?
Beating Endo, How to Reclaim Your Life from Endometriosis. It says, I'm no scientist, but I can say with complete confidence, there is nothing normal about knife stabbing pain during your period, nausea with bowel movement during your period, burning, itching, tingling pain sporadically throughout your cycle, and definitely nothing normal about pain during intercourse. Even though women go through the painful act of childbirth, in all caps, pain is not synonymous with being female.
Woo! Wow.
So say that again.
That last line. Yeah. I think we're oftentimes dismissed as women. And and a lot of medical research has predominantly been, or mostly been, on men. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't agree with you more about, you know, feeling like, am I having symptoms, or is this just how I'm always feeling, and not really knowing like what's normal anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You reading that made me think of something else. One of my biggest symptoms, I can't believe I forgot this. This was actually my worst symptom of all. If I had to pee, I'm not talking like I've been holding it for hours. I'm talking like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Knife stabbing pain. Like,
in your in the lower abdomen.
Like in my bladder too. Like,
yeah.
Again, just like you're peeing a knife. Sorry guys. Like that's how sharp it would be.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, during my second surgery, there was endo on my bladder. So it's just like ding ding ding, there we are.
Yeah.
Wait,
I forgot.
Can you explain? You told us before we started recording how you had the images present and you literally like were on Google or something trying to, because they had told you that you didn't have it after your first surgery, which I can't begin to imagine how disappointing that is, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us about that, because that's like just shows like the determination.
Yeah, the like grit you have to have to not. Yeah. So my first surgery, like I said, I was told I was fine, and that was devastating. And going back to what you were saying about validation, it's not that you need to be told like you're okay, but you feel crazy when you've been asking for help and people are going, we don't know. And finally when you're like, okay, I have an answer, this is it. And then they go, yeah, no, we don't know. You're back on the hamster wheel. And I mean, that was just so hard to get that news. So the week or so leading up to my surgery, and I don't know why, maybe God just gave me like a little nudge or something because I was so anxious, but I was just like, go look at your pictures from your first surgery. So like
smart.
Pulled them out of this folder and I'm staring at them, and I'm a Virgo, I'm a control freak. Like I need to know what I'm getting myself into. So I had spent like weeks Googling images of laparoscopic endo surgeries. It's disgusting, but kind of fun. Anyway, so I just wanted to know, like, what's going on in there? What am I preparing for? So I had been looking at all these pictures, and I pulled out my pictures, and I'm looking at Google, and I'm looking at my images from my first surgery. And I was like, Gavin, get in here. He comes running in, and I was like, am I tripping, or is this what's in these pictures? And he's like, I don't know, Megan. I don't know. So anyway, the night before the surgery, I was like laying in this hotel in San Diego, just like staring at these photos going, I think this is it. Because I was so scared, again, going into a second surgery. I feared for my mental health if I came out of this surgery and they told me I was fine. Yeah. I really was scared. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to be if that happens.
That's my fear.
So I just stayed up all night, just wide awake. I was like, what if this is a waste of time? Side note, if you ever have a surgery and you have pictures, take them to your second opinion.
Yeah,
I don't know why I didn't do that.
I'm now like rethinking everything with my surgery. I'm like, where are those pictures? I want those images.
Yes. I'm like, why did I not have somebody, why didn't I have her look at these? She could have told me right then and there. Like, so if you're out there and you've had a surgery, do that. Take the pictures. Yeah. So anyway, had the surgery. I come out of surgery, and this is the funniest part. You know, you're in recovery. You're like loopy, all whatever. They wouldn't let me see my husband until they took me out to the car. I hadn't talked to anybody. So they wheel me out to the car, and I get in the car, and I look at him, and I go, so do I have endometriosis? And he looked at me, and he was like, they haven't told you anything? And I was like, I mean, she said what they did in surgery, but it's all medical. So like, she didn't say endometriosis. She's excision of blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm on drugs. I don't know what any of this means, you know? And he was like, Megan, you had stage 3. And I sobbed. I mean, just
from relief.
Totally. And it's like, again, a twisted thing to be like, I've been diagnosed with this awful condition, yet so relieving to be like, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
All of this was worth to this point.
Yeah.
So anyway, follow up. I was like, I'm taking my images to my follow-up appointment because I need to know.
Right.
And so I just asked her, I said, can you please look at these and tell me if you see something in them? And she took a Sharpie and on every picture circled every spot that she removed during surgery. She was like, I removed this, I cut this out. See this right here? There was a whole wall of blood pockets behind this. We removed all of that. Like, she said, I don't know how a doctor could look at these images, let alone actually be inside your pelvis and not know what this is.
I think that's also extremely shocking that you think a regular OBGYN would be able to diagnose this or kind of see this, but you need a real specialist, I guess, for this.
Their training, my understanding from what I've heard,
an
OBGYN's training regarding endometriosis is basically, if you suspect it, put them on birth control. If that doesn't work, put them on Lupron. Like, if that doesn't work, refer them to a specialist because you're now out of your scope of work.
Yeah. Like I have an OB for when I deliver babies and then I have my gyno and then I have a specialist for my endo. So after I had my baby and I was still seeing my OB, I was like, I feel my endo coming back. And he's like, yeah, I mean, possibly like it really is probably coming back. Let's put you on birth control and we'll test it out. So I tested out this one birth control for 4 months and I went back to him and I'm like, this is not helping me. I actually feel worse. Wow. So is there anything else you recommend? And he's like, listen, we can try a bunch of things, but I don't know enough. Go back to your gyno.
Good on him.
Yeah. Who like told you had endo. So I was like, okay. So I went back to my gyno. I will go back to that OB because I loved him for my birth. So I'm back at my gyno now, and all the talks that I have with endo he's always saying like, I'm never going to do endo stuff for you alone. Like it's always going to be with the doctor that we used for this.
Good.
Yeah. And that's how you know you have good care. You need the specialty care.
Right.
And I wish doctors would refer out when it's not their specialty. Yeah. Why did you let me do a surgery when you did not know how to identify endometriosis? Right. Nothing made me more mad than that. I was like, how many other women have you told are fine and they're not?
Right.
So if it's a doctor's specialty, amazing. If it's not, like, please pass me off to someone else. Right. I would much rather go to someone who knows what they're looking for than to have you kind of know what this is, but it's really not your thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
And for those that are listening, at least for me, when I got my images back of what they lasered off, like what you're talking about with circling with a Sharpie on the images, like for me, it looked like pixie dust all over my organs. And that's what they go and laser off.
They also call it powder burns sometimes. If anyone says powder burns, that's another.
Yeah. So that's why I think it can't be caught on an X-ray or an MRI or a CT scan, like because they're using such high images, like those like bright lights, pixie dust, burns, stuff that you see like when you get opened up can't be brought in with a camera.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
yeah.
There's like no rule book or manual on how to kind of be a patient in this climate. Like you think like you just go to your doctor and they're going to have your best interest at heart and just have all the answers. And most of the time, maybe like they give you something good, but I think it's important to discuss that like they're also human and they might not know everything. And it's oftentimes like an art than it is a science. And not every person's experience is identical. So like knowing the nuances and the variations between you and then you, like it takes a lot from a doctor to know. So I agree with you on your own.
In the nicest way possible, like try to give all these doctors grace like you do with your own self, because doctors go to school for so many years and they get an influx amount of information that they need to retain in their head. So they know little bits and pieces of every little thing. So to be able to go to an endometriosis specialist, you're going to someone who knows the ins and outs of their specialty. So that is something so important,
like
right?
Specialty care. And right.
Yeah, like if I'm going to take Noah to get a rash checked out on her body, I'm first going to go to her pediatrician because the pediatrician knows special, but like what's going on in my child. And then to understand that rash, I will take Noah to a dermatologist because it's on the skin. So it's like, there's different layers to health conditions.
Totally. And so it's like, if this isn't the specialty of a gynecologist, let's refer to people who are specialists.
Right. And help and direct a patient in a way that's going to get them ultimately to their diagnosis or whatever it is that's going to help them. Oftentimes so many of us leave doctor appointments feeling like I didn't learn anything. Where did I change from the moment I stepped in to the moment I stepped out? And if it's a no, then maybe you have to kind of keep looking.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's this phrase that gets thrown around a lot of you have to advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself. And while that means getting second opinions and going to other doctors, I think a missing component of that is, I know doctors hate when you do your own research. And I'm not talking Google, I think I have a brain tumor, right? I'm talking, be aware of your body. Your body, be aware of it. If something feels off, don't brush it to the side. Just make note of it, because eventually your body will start to put the pieces of the puzzle together to show you the bigger picture of what's happening.
That's true.
All that to say, advocating for yourself isn't just finding the next doctor.
Right.
It's what can I learn about my condition, about my body, about my diet, about my lifestyle. What can I be doing to help my doctors?
Right.
Because ultimately, they're human. They can only do so much. They only have so many hours in the day.
Exactly. I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
And something that we all need to internalize. Keep a log. It's your responsibility too.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes. It's important, and not to diminish any of the challenges, but what's an achievement or a milestone that you guys hit in your health journey that you feel like your younger self or yourself a few years back would have been thank God for this moment in time?
Becoming a mom.
That revealed so much and helped you.
Well, I became a mom against all odds. So being told that I have endo and that my chances of having a kid are slim to none, and then now having one, that's the biggest milestone, and I can die happy. If I have to live with the rest of my life with pain in my lower abdomen and my pelvic region, but I have a kid, then I've reached success.
That's something that you...
I should have gone first. I don't want to follow that.
It's your turn, babe.
Oh God. I'm still trying to not drink wine so that I don't have flare-ups. That's where I'm at. No. Gosh, honestly, truly, I think the biggest thing for me, like we've said, is Reddit threads, listening to a podcast, hearing other women share their stories has helped champion me in a lot of ways. So being able to do the same thing, whether it's recommending a doctor or a supplement or whatever, being able to have been through it and give back to women who are dealing with the same thing, that to me, that's what we're here for, that's what life is about. So
yeah.
I love that.
I don't have a baby yet, so I can't claim that one. Maybe that will be it one day.
Both are beautiful, and I think and I say this, and it's a common theme that I bring up, but just finding the good in every challenge and finding a way to give back to the world or find the beauty in the shit, I think in the bumps, right? Embracing the shitty and the pretty. Remember that? I think that ultimately drives us to continue to seek answers, to foster a community, to support one another, and so appreciative for you and your vulnerability and you and yours, because I think this just will help so many people Yeah, and let's keep this going. This is only chapter 1. I think endo needs many other chapters and
Absolutely.
health in general, but yeah.
And I want to just reiterate again, we are not experts or specialists.
No.
So we just want to share our bump stories so that we can help anybody out there relate. And if you ever feel like you need someone to ask questions or vent to, or you just get an understanding, you can reach out to any of us three.
Seriously.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
We love you guys and we hear you and you're not crazy.
You're not crazy. You might be wrong, but you're not crazy.